Good evening and welcome to our Los Altos School District Special Education Town Hall meeting. Happy you could join us for this really focused session to talk to parents of students receiving special education services. I'm Jeff Baer, I'm Superintendent Los Altos School District, and we appreciate you being here. Want to introduce to you, we have 5 panelists with us tonight. We're going to run through a set of informational slides and then have plenty of time at the end for questions as well. But want to introduce to you those here who are going to be sharing their information and insights. First, we have Jennifer Kiker. She's our Director of Special Education. And Sandra McGonigal, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. Christina Murata is a coordinator in the Special Education Office. Claire Griffin is our school psychologist, currently at Covington School. And Erin Griswold is behaviorist in our district. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here as well to share your information tonight and to answer some questions. Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
All right, thank you, Jeff. I want to start, let's see, here's our presentation, and this will be made available for folks after our meeting today. If we can move to our next slide, it was just the rundown of our panelists that Jeff introduced, so thank you all for being here today. My first slide, I want to talk a little bit, just want to give some gratitude and some thanks. This has certainly been a trying time for us all, and I'm really proud of how our staff and community have shined during this time. I want to give thanks to our entire special education team, our teachers, our behaviorists, our behavior techs, our speech pathologists, school psychologists, instructional assistants, and so many more, OTs, PTs, everyone who has just worked tirelessly at all hours of the day and the night to really support the students and parents in this incredible change of events. And I want to thank you, parents. You've been thrust into the role of both parent and teacher. And while we knew we had an amazing parent community, what you have been done in this short amount of time is nothing short of amazing. So I just want to thank you for your partnership and your support. All right, so our main agenda we wanted to go through is we're going to talk a little bit about what's happened from the school closures, a little bit about extended school year. I know that that's a hot topic for a lot of folks, and then some information around the planning and what was considerations for the fall. So to start, we want to go for the very first part is when just a reminder of what happened back on March 13th when we got the call that all schools would be closed. We can go to the next slide. So we know that school closure began. We transitioned to this world of remote learning. We stopped all assessments that were in place. We put a hold, those meetings postponed for those few weeks. We really jumped into training. We trained our specialists on teletherapy practice. They are practitioners who have done mostly face-to-face, and so we did some specialized training for them on how to deliver quality therapy online. We worked with the C&I department to do training for our teachers on doing instruction and distance learning format. We really increased our supports to students and parents so that they can, sometimes it was technical support, sometimes it was emotional support to really get that access to remote learning started. And then we did some targeted outreach to those families that struggled during that transition. We really worked to streamline the Google Classroom platform and expectations for students to come up with new systems to accommodate the new challenges and executive functioning that were coming up and surfacing in this remote world. We worked on how to engage and motivate students in a distance format. And really looked at best practice examples around the world and delivering instruction to students with special needs. We did lack clear direction from the state on how districts would serve students with disabilities. And so we did a lot of learning and we did a lot of webinars and outreach to really look and try to identify the best way to service our students. I will say that I feel pretty proud that we were one of the first districts to be able to activate a plan to support our students, both in the general education and the special education world as quickly as we were able to do that. So I feel pretty proud about that. Next slide. We then jumped into our distance learning, and you all received a distance learning plan individualized for your student. We started to resume our IEP meetings. We kind of assumed a business as usual. You know, we did assessments that we could do through records review, through surveys, and through remote rating scales. So we were able to continue some of those. All of our initial IEPs that involved assessments needed to take place on one-to-one were on hold, but other than that, we were able to move forward. And we really ramped up our distance learning along with our outreach to families. We we created individualized plans or goal-oriented, but also looking at access to curriculum for students. We did a lot more parent coaching and support, since now as parents, you are the teachers oftentimes, and then looked at and developed the correct teletherapy for services and confidentiality for our students. Some celebrations to be noted is that some of our students are really responding. They're finding really creative ways to engage, and our behaviorists and our therapists and our teachers are really working to engage students remotely. We saw an increase in the parent school connection, because now as remote learners, we really needed to rely on that connection with families. And so we saw some wonderful consulting happening that way across all of our specialists. Our guidance from the state came out as do the best you can to the best extent possible. And so that really wasn't good enough for us. We really worked hard to make sure that we had a tailored program for each student. And we were off and running. So while we do have some celebrations, we can go to the next slide, that we were really proud of. Some of our students who were struggling maybe in live brick and mortar, we're really starting to flourish with the ability to kind of work from home. We do know that remote learning does not work for all. We know that there's motivation, attention, executive functioning, and independence all play into that ability for a student to learn and to access it remotely, and that isn't working for all students. We recognize that not only are you a parent of a child with disability, you're now thrust into that role as an educator, and your child requires specialized services to access education that's been identified. And so we know that's a huge undertaking. We know that some students have struggled to access it this way. And so, and we've had some parents tell us that this is just too much. We're focusing on our family and our household goals right now. And we understand that. We know that this job is really hard. So I want you to know, as parents, for those students that are struggling, that are not accessing, we are keeping records of that and working to how we're going to remedy that in the fall when we resume. Okay, so with that, we're going to move forward to extended school year, which I know is a hot topic. So we're going to have Christina Murata, our coordinator, talk a little bit about our extended school year.
Yes, so for extended school year, I want to first start off with acknowledging what was delivered on June 1st from the Santa Clara County Public Health Department. And in their summary of that shelter-in-place order updates, they did, there is a bullet item under additional businesses and what can reopen, that childcare, summer camp, summer school, and all other educational or recreational programs for all children in stable groups of up to 12 children can resume. And so we are really excited that the county is lifting some restrictions. But before we go into reopening our campuses for live instruction, I do want to go into some of the considerations that we have to look into prior to planning for that. And so if we can move to the next slide. So these are a lot of the considerations we are discussing for opening our schools. That includes instruction and facilities, classroom safety, having access to the staff members to the PPE, availability, safety training, staffing availability. We did plan so far for our summer school to start in June 15th, and those staffing considerations would change if we change any aspect of it. And then transportation, making sure that our students have equal access to the ESY. And so those are the things that we have to consider when it comes to reopening in the fall. Having said that, we are planning on still maintaining our distance learning plan for extended school year, because although the Santa Clara County lifted the restrictions, it's about 9 days or 8 days of turnaround time for us to produce live instruction. And that's not enough time for us to really plan for things and making sure that all of these considerations are in place. Typically, we do plan for ESY maybe 3 to 4 months in advance, and that was put on hold during school closure. And this is good news that we're lifting restrictions, but a week's notice isn't enough time for us to plan for instruction during the school. So for now, we are maintaining our plan for keeping distance learning for our schools in this summer. Next slide. So This was shared for parents who did for students who did qualify for extended school year. This is the plan for instruction for our classrooms. It is maintaining the same schedules, which is 8:30 to 12:30 every day. A lot of the aspects that you're already experiencing with the distance learning platform will be maintained within that time frame between June 15th and July 10th. That includes 30 to 60 minutes of daily group instruction from the teacher, three times a week small group instruction or individual instruction depending on the student needs. That's tailored to their IEP goals. Some parent coaching will continue to help with the implementation at home, and then teletherapy for specialists, of course, will continue as well. Next slide. And so just as a little note around ESY, we have this every year. It is not it's not summer school, and it is really for regression and recoupment, and it's not for acquisition of new goals. And it is also not for us to remedy the effects of the school closure. It is for us to work on IEP goals because the students really need that structure and that routine, because without it, there would be a more significant impact to their skills. And so just a reminder that this is ESY's, ESY is not for. Next slide.
Okay, and I noticed that we do have some questions. We have a few more slides we want to go through, and then we'll come back and take all of the questions. We know that there's going to be additional questions about ESY. So this is the last portion of our little presentation. We want to talk a little bit about planning for August. And next slide. So I want to just kind of go over the learning options considered. This is something that as a larger district we're looking at, and then individually as a special education department we're looking at. There are, I think Jeff says that there are bookends, right, Jeff? You say that we have anywhere from all students on campus, which is our preferred option. We'd like to resume normalcy as soon as possible if it's safe, and then all the way through to virtual school, which is where we're at right now. And so there's all these different hybrid options in between. We're exploring many different options as a district. We don't have guidance yet from the board about what that will look like, but on top of that, we need to also look at our specialized populations and how we can start to service those students as quickly as possible who are not accessing from this remote learning. So that is what we're hoping to hear from you guys a little bit more about. We want to know a little bit how to be able to run smaller groups. We're looking into state and county regulations around that. And we're also looking into school districts. There are some school districts out in California and outside in other countries as well who are starting to bring small groups of students back. And so we're learning from their procedures and working to acquire what we need to be able to make sure that we can keep our students and our staff safe. So the next slide talks a little bit more about the considerations Christina went over for ESY. These are very, the same kind of considerations we're looking for the school year. Being able to provide appropriate personal protective gear for our staff members that's instructionally sound. How do we keep kids in small groups? What do the dividers look like? How do we ensure sensory equipment can be used safely for students and then cleaned in between? We have kids that have social and behavioral goals. Some students have more extreme behaviors. How do we keep the students safe and the staff safe to be able to manage those behaviors? Environmental, the cleaning, the sanitizing, all of that is district-wide we're looking at. How to make sure that the toileting students, some of our students still require toileting support, and so how do we do that safely for both the students and the staff? We're looking all around. This is just like a very snapshot of all of the multiple considerations, but this is what we've been spending the last, kind of 2 months on. How do we mitigate some of these things so that we can get our learners back onto campus? I wanted to share with you a little bit of what some of those things that we've been looking at. Okay, the next slide, I think Claire, as our psychologist, is going to talk a little bit more about assessments.
Sure. So we, the psychologists in the district, have been consulting and working together so that we want to make sure that we're really in alignment when it comes to assessing our students. So we have been collaborating, and we do have a list of students who maybe we started initial assessments on before school closure. And then I have been communicating with parents, and the psychologists in the district have been communicating with parents as well for other students who might be exhibiting more significant needs and we need to assess in the fall. well. But in the meantime, while we're not currently assessing students, the psychologists have been consulting with the teachers and supporting behind the scenes to offer strategies to work with students who are struggling. So there's not a lot of students who are struggling out there just by themselves. We are offering support. And the considerations that we're talking about as a group are really, first, we're taking guidance from the health officials, but then also we're looking at guidance from our national professional organizations. And so we want to make sure that the Los Altos psychologists are in alignment with psychologists across the nation, just to make sure that we are adhering to our national norms for all of our testing. And then we want to make sure that our results are valid. So when we are in person and we're administering assessments, we adhere to really strict norms when administering those tests. And so we want to consider when we come back, what does that look like? There are some tests that are available online that we have explored, but we also want to make sure that we're adhering to the testing norms so that we can get a really valid representation of where our students are performing. So that's definitely something that we're collaborating on. And then in the next slide, just talking a little bit more about the social emotional impact. I am so thankful that we have kind of come together as a district to really recognize the social emotional impact that this whole COVID has had on our students. And I know that that's a priority of the district. So kind of going into this, the psychologists were working together with other district personnel to make sure that we were reacting to the social emotional needs of students, staff, and parents as well. So we provided counseling support, resources to parents, resources to students, and psychologists continue meeting with those students who were at risk or higher needs. And then currently what we're moving into is kind of sitting with the discomfort, working with students and staff members and families on managing their range of emotions. There's a lot of uncertainty in the future. So just coaching a lot of students and staff members as well on the discomfort of not knowing what's ahead. But then what we're kind of moving to as a psychologist group, but then also with other personnel in the district, is where we're going. So we're talking a lot about proactive measures that we want to put in place to set up our students for success. So when we do welcome them back, in whatever form that might be, that our teachers are really well equipped to be able to handle the social emotional needs of students, both kind of processing with them everything that has happened, but then also setting them up for success for next year in terms of schooling may look different, or how to support the needs of students who may have fallen a little bit more behind. And then looking for beyond too, that something that we are also aware of is there could be long-term lasting effects of this on our children. And so we as a site group are consulting with other mental health providers in our community, just to make sure that we are taking care of both the mental health and social emotional needs of our students, because we know that that is such a critical part of learning, and the academic piece can't happen if that social emotional piece is not intact. So it's something that's on our mind and that we're continuing to have conversations around.
All right, thank you. And so we are really looking for your input. I know my job is to facilitate learning for your learners, and so I need to hear from you parents on your comfort level. Where are you? Are you ready for your students to come back if we can ensure the proper equipment and the proper procedures for safety? Are you feeling like it's too soon? So I have a very quick survey coming out to you after this meeting, being sent out to all parents of students with IEPs. I promise only five questions, so really short, but I really want to understand where and I need to dial down kind of school by school what you're looking at, what your preference is and what your comfort level is, so that I can help design that instruction and that experience in August to meet those needs. So I really hope that you respond to that and help guide our plan for the start of the school year. And with that, I think we're ready for our last slide. I want to thank, I feel when all of this happens, you really take stock in what you have, and I'm thankful for my family, I'm thankful for my support system, and I'm very thankful for my job. I'm thankful for the people I work with. Los Altos has been an amazing place to be, and I'm thankful for you as a parent community, because I really have just been, I brought to tears many times on the wonderful things that are happening. So even through adversity, it's amazing to see how we shine. So with that, we'd be happy to take your questions, and I think someone is going to be helping us. And you're welcome to do the little hand signal to let us know that you have a question, and then we'll take them in the order that you've raised your hand. And some people have submitted them, so if we run out of questions, I've got a few extra.
Okay, so our first speaker will be Azar Silver.
Sorry, that was when I first joined, I wasn't getting any volume, so I wanted to see if everyone was on mute. I didn't actually have a question. Thanks.
Well, that's,
I think you're live, Azar.
Yeah, that's a great question to start.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was saying that I had raised my hand right when I first logged in because I couldn't hear anybody, and I was just confirming if everyone was on mute. So that got
it.
It's a great question to start with.
Sorry.
We got that one. Next.
Great.
Our next speaker is Yoshi.
Hi, I just wanted to know, so this is Michelle. I also had the same issue with the speaker, so I had to switch my computer. Do you guys have any plans on like giving additional support once we get back? For example, like we missed out on ABA, obviously, we missed out on speech and OT as well. I know that you guys have coached us parents, but it's been very difficult for us to execute. So I'm wondering if you guys will increase some hours to support them once they get back. That's my first question. And second question is, I understand that you guys need a lot of prep for summer, but any chance that like there might be some support in person that you could give, because my kid is basically regressing, so it's been very difficult for us.
Yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, we are looking at that. Some students, it's going to be student by student. I mean, all students have missed out to essential and some sort of education during this time. This is not ideal for everyone, right, across the nation and across our state, but we know our learners are specialized. That's why they're on IEP. So we are developing something in conjunction kind of with our SELPA and hopefully state, if they give us some better guidance, to really look at it kid by kid of what they need. And so if it does turn out that we will be looking at kid by kid as my answer. And so some students may require additional support to be able to get to them back to where they need to be. And we know that. The guidance right now is telling us that that we look at that kind of after about 8 weeks or so of instruction, then we kind of assess to see where students are and then determine what is needed moving forward. But it will, my imagination, it will be kind of a year process of kind of looking to see what students need. But and then your second question is around in person. I mean, I think if we felt that we had the equipment and the procedures in place, we would be ready to go. But that our challenge is we don't have the equipment or the procedures in place to keep students safe and to keep our staff safe. So we don't. It's not a safe place to start next week. So we don't see that happening.
With the virtual, can you guys do a lesson directly to the kids instead of coaching the parents? Because, you know, for example, I have private speech, and private speech we'll do it on Zoom, but with you guys, it's been like parental coaching. I'm wondering if you guys can just do it directly so that it doesn't have to be just the parent coaching for the summer.
Yes, it's all been individualized. So if your program for your child is not working for you, please ask, say, this isn't working, this is what I want. And you can email me that, or Christina, either one of us directly, and we'll facilitate that with your case manager. But absolutely, if it is not working for you and you want something different, please advocate and reach that out. So I've made a note of that and we'll follow up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Johnny Chung.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Claire. You know my son, Apollo. So he sometimes can get pretty physical, right? So and it's very hard for him to be even one-on-one. I'm afraid would be have safety issue there. So that's why in order to keep both sides safe, I think virtual would be very helpful. Okay, and first thanks for for Andrea, and Kirsten, and also Jessica helping those videos, and also the virtual. It enforce him, really enforce him to do outside, to remind him about some of his behaviors. And I would like to continue with that way, because it's really at this situation, I think that's the safest way, And it just, yeah, sometimes I miss a couple sessions because I have 3 kids and that all have their own meetings, and just like it's really very chaotic. So sometimes, but I just want to say, thank you very much, and I would like to, yeah, definitely virtual sessions, one-on-one, that's very helpful. Yeah.
Thank you.
We miss you, Johnny, and your kiddos.
Yeah, that miss you all too. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Matt Sandora.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. Yeah, I would like to emphasize that we've been actually extremely surprised at how well my son Nicholas has been able to do virtual therapy. I mean, he's doing it both privately and with you guys. I hope that obviously that would continue if we have to, but I want it to be one-to-one, in real life. As a fellow educator, I know how hard that is. I mean, even at the high school level, they're telling us we'd have to wipe the desk down after every single period. And I know it's even more difficult for our kids because they touch more things maybe than the high school kids. But one of the things that I was wondering is, I know that one of the hardest parts for this is that, the kids can't be on the playground because that's just a big spot for them to spread things. And I know that it's a huge, for Nicholas for sure, and probably a lot of his classmates, a huge reward to be able to go outside and play. So I was wondering, do you think that there can be some, when we go back, is that going to be, if we can't use the equipment, would there be some sort of way they can maybe walk around the campus, or is there some sort of activity they could do outside?
And Jeff, you're welcome to jump in, but so I think that the other challenge for us is that the landscape by which we make decisions is changing every week and sometimes every day. So, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, there are, absolutely no play equipment. And I think the latest I heard said possibly if it's only a few students and it's the same crew that uses that. I mean, so it literally is changing every day. That's another consideration. We have looked at some of other school districts where they have started with a small pod of 5 students back, and they've just done walking trips, but we also know some of our more involved students are going to be really upset if they can't go and climb that structure that they've always climbed. So, we don't want to create more behavior challenges by limiting what they can and can't do. I do hope that by August, that would be lifted and we'd be able to have a way to keep that. And that's, again, those procedures we need, but to keep it safe so that students could access that leisure time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. And maybe while we wait for anyone else to raise their hand, a couple of parents. Oh, we have a few more. We'll go to who's here first.
And our next speaker is Kimberly Fletcher Tyler.
So I actually have 2 partial questions. First, my daughter only qualifies for speech ESY, and I haven't gotten communications on how often that will be. It had sounded like it was every day, which does not sound correct for a speech one. So will I get more details on her time and how often in the next couple days as we're trying to schedule for summer?
Yes, I'll answer that, Jennifer. You should be able to receive communication. It won't be probably until next week. We just had our ESY planning meeting for speech. So it will be around next week for scheduling purposes.
Okay, and then my second follow-up question is also about, since my daughter has really short attention span, currently her 30 minutes resources time once a week is not being effectively used. Could we consider, particularly as we go back next year, if we're still in this mode, offering more broken chunks? For my son, actually that 30 minutes is great. He has can work a long time, and keeping them going is great. But for my daughter, we need 8 minutes, 4 times a week kind of thing, because that's all she's got. So I just wanted to comment on that. And also I guess ask real quick, should I make sure that I advocate for that also to communicate that's what I would like as we go into next year?
Yes, absolutely. We have a lot of learning on our end as well too. So we kind of had a schedule that we thought would work, and then we've adapted it and changed it, and it keeps going. So yes, I think you should definitely work with the case manager to talk about what worked and what you recommend moving forward for next year. They know that as well. And so we have had that in one of our teacher meetings. We did talk about for the younger learners, particularly to have shorter timeframes. A lot of our speech teachers did it 15 minutes. So like a shorter time frame to be able, more often to be able to get the learning happening, because attention span to look at a screen for 30 minutes is
yes. It's definitely been a struggle with focus, and it just doesn't feel the same as being in person, of course. So thank you.
Yeah, that's what my specialists are saying as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Stephen Hessing.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Danielle James. I don't know how I'm logged in as Stephen. But
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was at my end. My apologies. So go ahead, Danielle.
Sure. Well, hello. And I just want to say a quick thank you. The program started right away, and our resource teacher, Andrea Powers, just took it, and it's really been excellent. And I just am curious about whether you anticipate being able to accommodate parents who might prefer to keep their child at home, and whether that might help with your resource planning, with your resource allocation, and whether, I know everything is up in the air and it continuing to change, but if that were the case, would it be possible to continue with kind of the live interaction, the kind of regular, kind of small amounts of contact with, kind of substantial work done at home?
Yeah, that's the purpose of the survey. It's a very quick five question survey, but it is exactly for that. We recognize some of our students even have compromised immune systems, so some kids are not safe to come back, even if the larger population feels that way. And then some parents' comfort level is not that. And I believe that's the same that in our wider LASD population, where it's the same concern we have. So yes, we need to be able to develop support for students regardless of whether they choose to come back to school or stay home. And that's what the survey is there, so I can dial that in a little bit more and kind of know what I'm playing with to be able to figure out how to make that happen for everybody.
And I'll just add to that. Hi, Danielle. I'll just add to that it is similar on the larger scale in LASD. And as Jennifer mentioned earlier, without understanding all the parameters at this time, it does make it very challenging to plan. So Sandra and her team are doing a great deal of work, really developing multiple paths on this. As Jennifer described, we know kids have complicated health situations or compromised health circumstances, and they're maybe in the house as well. So we realize that there's some protection that might want to go on there for our families. And we have it on the other end as well with our teaching staff, right? Teaching staff that has similar considerations that we have to adhere to or watch for and plan for. And it is part of the complicated puzzle going on right now in planning for all those variations. So you will get this initial survey from Jennifer, as she described, short survey, she promised, but I can tell you that as the planning continues, you are going to get more questions, because we're going to need to drill down by student, by family, by teacher, by school, to really understand completely for our planning purposes. So that's just a little advanced warning, I guess, that we are going to be asking you some fair amount of questions over the coming weeks to piece all of this together.
Thank you. And I'll have to talk with my husband and make sure we're on the same page.
Stephen Hessing. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that should work. So thanks, first of all, for organizing this town hall. I think it's a really good initiative to get that communication out, and it's really appreciated. I've been in conversations with some of you about the appropriateness of virtual learning for my kiddo. So that's been challenging. The other thing is that I may have less concerns about infection rates than other parents may have. Given also that, you know, my origin is back in Northwest Europe, and all those kids have been going back to school for 4 weeks without any uptick in infection rates. So what I would like to ask, what kind of options have you considered for the ESY to be taking place on campus? Right. So yes, I understand May 5th, June 5th, June 15th is really short term, but you know, maybe we should move it out by a month. Have you looked at those kind of options?
Yeah, and it's there's so, like we said, it usually takes 3 months for us to plan for those 4 weeks. And so there's contracts with teachers have already been signed and done. There's like a transportation fact, we contract with another agency, it's called a Joint Powers Association. And so transportation is through that. So we don't have flexibility to move our dates if we were gonna have transportation as part of it. And then the the procedures to have the personal protective gear, we have things on back orders. I ordered clear face masks a month ago and they still haven't come in. So we don't have the right equipment even right now. Sanitizer, I mean, we were working really hard just to get sanitizer to our schools so that the teachers could come in and close out their classrooms. And like, that was kind of down to the wire. So right now we're not in a space to ensure anyone's safety. We also have to be mindful, even though as a parent, your voice is definitely in my ear about how do we get kids to campus who really are ready to come back or not responding well to this. I hear you, and that's been a driving force. At the same time, I have to be mindful of safety and security for our staff and to make sure that I can ensure their safety. And I don't have all of that together right now.
I do want to add to that also, Jennifer, that as far as ESY staffing is concerned, or teaching staffing is concerned, most of the teachers who are providing supports right now in distance learning are the ones teaching the remote learning or distance learning ESY. And so that provides continuity for the students. That may not necessarily be the case if we change dates or change aspects of it. Because of other considerations that they have personally. But right now I could say that most of the students receiving ESY are going to be receiving it from the current teachers that they are getting support from during this time.
Our next speaker is Sandy O'Keefe.
Hey guys, first off, thank you for everything you've done. I know it's not easy to pivot, to virtual learning on sort of a dime's notice. Given that, I want to echo Stephen's comments. I think it's great that you're sending out the survey because I think there are a spectrum of families, and like any medical decision, it's a trade-off between benefit and risk. I've seen myself the regression in my preschooler within the first week of the lockdown and shelter in place. So we really scrambled to make sure that he had some support going forward. And given our own family situation, we would, similar to Stephen, we would rather have him go back in person. And that's because of our family situation. We don't live with grandparents; they're all out of state, fairly healthy household. So I just want to say that I'm glad you're doing surveys and taking in consideration everyone's thoughts on it. My second question to you would be, given my preschooler is going back at the preschool level, and Ms. Katz's doing a fantastic job. We're excited about going back, but I'd like to know if you will keep us updated on what are some of the precautions that you would take or you would require. So for example, I have not had him, my preschooler, wear a mask if that will be required, it would be good for us as parents to get a heads up so that we can start training him during the summertime. So same as it's hard for you guys to pivot, it would be really hard for the parents to pivot, you know, and when there are rules put in place. So the earlier we know, even if it's just a work in progress, is some consideration, I think it would be really helpful for us to help our little ones adjust and be ready for the in-person.
And Sandy, I agree with you, and that's why I promised there was only 5 questions, but one of them is around your students' comfort level and speaking to others with masks and being able to wear a mask themselves. And so all of that, I'm trying to get a baseline from our different learners. And since your survey, you'll put in who your learner is, so then I can kind of extract it per learner group and identify where the baseline is so that we can give you some ideas where you need to go moving forward once we know. Again, that requirement keeps changing. Originally it was everyone needed to, and now it's I think if you're under 7, you don't under 7, right? You don't need to have a mask. But again, all of those things I agree with you. That's why that's part of the survey. I'm trying to get a baseline of where my learners are with their comfort level with hand washing and face masks.
Even if the teachers will be wearing it and they'll be wearing the entire time, then that's something we need to get them used to so they're not surprised.
Yep. And so, like I said, one of my questions is how comfortable are they? And you could say no, not at all. And then that'll help me know what information I can send to you prior to school resuming.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our next speaker is David Crofts.
I'm unmuted now, I think. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Firstly, let me just say, I think you've done an outstanding job. It's not been easy for anybody, for students, for parents, for teachers, but as a team, and I think for the whole extended team around you, just thank you in navigating us through this period. It's not easy. I think my question's probably just been asked. It was the same one really about masks, and whether you had any preliminary thoughts on what the approach may be there, because that's, I think, what we're finding with our son Callum is, you know, we try not to take him out too often because we know he's a bit of a liability if he does go out, yeah? And one of the things we do insist, contrary to the previous speaker, is when he does go out, he does have a mask on, but he struggles to keep that on. He's constantly pulling it down over his nose and all those things. So it's really, I was just thinking, whether you had any thoughts, because it sounds like the rest of us are going to be living in a world with masks, and it's hard just to think how we knit these two together.
So that we could get used to him wearing it even an hour in a day at home, say, you know, if we knew that.
I think that's similar to what the previous person was saying. If we need to start preparing for him, how do we do that? And and what conditions may there be around it? Because it's hard enough for him to wear a mask for 10 minutes, let alone hours. Yeah, all day.
Yeah, I hear you. And the great question. That's why we have Erin Griswold here, one of our behaviorists, and she's part of the team, and so she will definitely be instrumental in helping us. So it's more of a behavioral, right? It's like, how do you behaviorally teach these new expectations? And so once we identify kind of the baseline of where our different learners are, we'll be leaning on our behaviorists to help guide us on sending parents. And I know Erin had already shared out a great social story for wearing masks, and we'll make sure that we can send that to the larger group of parents as well. But yes, absolutely, that is part of our summer work.
That's great. The more guidance, the better. That's great, and the more prep, the better. Thank you.
Thank you,
Jennifer. I'll just add into that. You know, and I am on a call with the County Office of Education and the superintendents, as well as the Public Health Department, a couple of times a week. And as these current modifications to the health order came out, right, these are the ones that are going to be effective starting Friday morning, with the directives given to summer camps and summer schools and those types of organizations who have kids at the heart of what they do, and the language around the order right now talks about children who are 7 to 12 should wear a mask. Children who are 13 or over shall wear a mask is essentially the language. It is very clearly pointed out that we shouldn't assume that that is foreshadowing what will come for orders for schools in the fall. So I'm just pointing that out to kind of highlight the complications here, that as much as we would like to be able to say, we will be expecting this, please prepare for it, we aren't able to do that right now, unfortunately. But what I can promise you is the moment that we do, we will make sure you know, because as both David and I think Sandy was last pointed out, helping your children, helping our students prepare for that, and be able to come to school with the least amount of surprise is really important. So as soon as we know, you will know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Erica Shapiro.
Hi. Oh my God. I'm in the middle of taking ice out of a freezer. Sorry, really hot today. Okay. So here's my question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
So my question is this. I'm just wondering how outside of the box you're thinking from, so I have 3 children. My youngest is the one that's finally now needs an IEP, but the older 2, one in high school and one in actually entering high school next year, haven't. So this is kind of a new territory for me. But one of the things that I really missed out, and I have a very difficult time making happen at home, is physical fitness. And I think that plays a lot into our ability to study. And so I'm wondering, have you thought outside the box in like getting kids together to go for a walk? Like even if it's out in nature, we live in an amazing community where we have lots of green space where we could get kids out just walking in a very safe way, so that it doesn't include playground equipment and things like balls and things where they're. So I'm just wondering, have you given any thought to that? Because I think that is a piece that is really impeding my daughter's success in education. Does that make sense?
It's like a hybrid outdoor school kind of. That sounds lovely.
Yes, basically.
Yeah, we've thought of a lot of different scenarios, but we haven't talked about taking our learning on the move, kind of on a field trippy type of a way. But I will consider anything. So thank you for that thought. We'll put it in the considerations. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Nicole Emmons.
Hi, hopefully my audio is on. We had a great teleconference IEP annual meeting this spring, unexpectedly. It went really well. But the team did identify that our son needed an increase in minutes. We totally understand that that was not feasible this spring, and they've done a great job meeting. It has not been an executive function challenge for my son or anything like that, but we're wondering if virtual school continues in the fall, if the goal or the plan is for full minutes to be met once the school district has had more time to prepare and the resource teams have more time under their belt to prepare, because we are a little concerned that, they identified a need to increase minutes, and then, we just don't know how long this will, persist. If in the fall we could expect the full goal to resume.
Yeah. So it is my hope that we could make sure that we give the kids what they need in the fall, right? Whatever that means. That means that they have to come to campus for short amounts of time to be able to be in small groups to get to access the resource, and then the rest is virtual. Then maybe that's that. Like there's so many different ways that I'm hoping that we can be creative to think about what our kids need, and being mindful of different parents' wishes. So, yes, definitely. I just don't know what that looks like until I know the parameters of what it is, right? So I think that our distance learning plan was not a maximization of what we do. It was more of, we're in crisis and we are getting something the best that we can. We have a lot more time and foresight to be able to plan for a better, I won't say better, I think we did a great job of implementing, but it was not the full IEP minutes. And we have those there because we know the kids need them. So my job is to figure out how can we make that work for each learner within their family. So it's going to be a little bit, there isn't going to be something that everybody wants 100%, but I'm hoping to maximize what we can do within for each site. And it might mean that you come to campus for a short amount of time to get that learning in, and then you access other parts remotely. I don't know yet.
All right, thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Jayrem Mutaganda.
Less of a question, more of a request, I guess. First of all, thank you very much. I really think you have been doing a wonderful job. It's not easy, as everybody else pointed out. So I was just trying to think through what is it that I would answer for, kind of questions that I'm expecting in your surveys. And I'm struggling with it because like the way things are changing for the district to plan, they are changing for me to plan too, as in, maybe it's going to be miraculously some drug comes along or some vaccine comes along. And if I end up saying now that I'm not comfortable and things change 2 months from now, how much these answers are set in stone? Means I'm hoping that there would be a back and forth, as in, for example, take the mask. We will start my kid to start, wearing mask at home. We'll try to read the social story that we are hoping to get. But we don't know whether he is going to be completely comfortable or not. So basically what I'm trying to say is what we think the current state and what we want ideally to be, maybe not the same. So I don't know exactly how I should respond to the surveys. And I don't know how much it would be difficult for you if I changed. If I now say, I want 50% of the time virtual, and at the end of August or at the end of July, I'm a lot more comfortable. I really want him to go to school all the time. I was hoping that you would keep that dynamic in mind, that things are changing for us too, and we are also trying to make the students be aware, make them be able to exploit their best, either virtual or physical schools.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great point. I'm a parent as well, and please don't hold me what I say today in a month, right? Like I definitely understand that. So I think that's what Jeff was talking about, that this is the first survey that's just targeted to you as a special education parent, but it's not the last one. And I imagine that many parents will have different levels of comfortness of returning, and that's going to change. And I think that's the same. I know Sandra's working on that also for the larger population. So, I would imagine we're nothing if not flexible in special education, is what I always say. And so I would imagine that we would have a plan to start the school year and then have different points of entry along the way for people to change their minds as well. If you're in a specialized program, like particularly for your child, that might be a lot easier to do than in a larger, second grade classroom. So, but yeah, absolutely. We wouldn't, I want the response to the surveys, I want it for how you're feeling at this moment in time, projecting what you think for August as best you can now. We will be circling back with you. And if you change your mind, absolutely, we'll be working with you on that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll just reinforce that. I think that's a really important point you raise, is that is your best guess at what you believe at this moment. And your family's situation and or thinking might change. I am also pretty confident that in the next 10 weeks, by the time school starts up again in mid-August, there are going to be changes on the landscape from a health perspective with regard to what the Santa Clara County Public Health Department's health orders are at that moment in time. So I imagine families are thinking much like we are thinking, that there are multiple paths ahead, and depending on how the landscape changes, it's going to change where your thinking is as a family. And so we definitely are prepared for that, and we absolutely expect it as well. So we will be checking in more than once, I can promise you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. definitely.
For time, we'll take the last two. I think we have two left, and then anyone else after that, please email myself or Christina your questions, and then we'll try to put together a big Q&A for families who weren't able to make it today to send that out as well.
Our next speaker is Zib Attar.
Hi, it's Ziv Attar's wife. I'm using his laptop. I wanted to, I think I'm echoing you, Jennifer, because you've touched this subject regarding minutes in IEP plan. So during this period of crisis where everybody was confused, we nobody really followed according to the plan, and we hardly received like even 30 minutes a week, which we would have normally received an hour a day for our daughter. So our daughter is entering 6th grade, which is a crucial period of time. Also emotional and also educational, because she needs to prepare for middle school. And I wanted to know, like, looking at the future, looking at the fall, will she receive the minutes that she needs?
I mean, my hope is that yes. I mean, we have those IEP plans.
In full, it's like at least like maybe 70% or.
Yeah, I think like back to one of the first questions too, like if you feel that your distance learning plan is not working for your learner, I do want you to reach out to your case manager and say that too, because I think it's really important. We were not able to do the full minutes that was in an IEP, just like a 3rd grade classroom was not able to do the full 3rd grade from 8:30 to 3 either for 4th grade. And so we were not able to, we did a portion of that, just like we had a portion of our general education curriculum. We don't think that that's ideal. We don't want to continue that moving forward. We want to try to be able to deliver the students the services that they need that were identified on their IEP. And so again, responding to that survey helps me to plan so that we can kind of try to see what's the best way to be able to deliver the services and what's the staffing that I need to be able to do that as well, right? School by school. But I would reach out, ask you to reach out to your case manager to let them know what you felt wasn't working, so that we can make sure that we, regardless of what type of situation we're in, that we make sure that her needs are being met better.
Okay, yeah. And obviously, touching on the on-site, when you mean IEP learning, do you mean live learning, or recorded? This is something that I'm don't fully understand. Is it more like live? No, for IEP meetings, are they planned to be live meetings or recorded meetings?
Oh, you mean our virtual meetings through the Google Meet?
Yes. So the virtual meetings are planned to be live or recorded?
Yeah, I don't know yet. It'll all depend on, I'm going to prioritize making sure that our students are learning and hopefully coming to school as much as possible. But again, I don't know if I can do the same with every single staff member to be able to come to a live meeting. So I'm not sure what that looks like right now as well.
Okay.
I will tell you that all of my staff wants to come back. Like that, they all want to come back. We want to come back. I mean, like, this is not how, I don't believe counseling wants to be delivered virtually. Like this is not ideal for our behaviorists. So I think that our intent is to figure out the safest way to get back to the person to person. But it might not be the adults. The adults might be virtual to keep safety, and we'll prioritize the kid connection first. So I'm not sure, but
oh, let me clarify. When I meant live meeting, it was live online meeting, as opposed to recorded online meetings. So most of the IEP meetings, would they be recorded and then sent to the kids, or will they be live online meetings?
Oh, you're meaning instruction. I'm thinking, and I live in the world of IEP meetings, which I go to about 20 a week. So in my mind, you were talking about an annual IEP meeting. I apologize, I misunderstood. You mean instruction. So
yes, instructions.
Yep. So Sandra has really led and her team have led an amazing professional development that our teachers are going through right now to really streamline and up the amount of live instruction, and then also to increase the effectiveness of our recorded lessons as well. So it's going to depend on what program your child is in and what that looks like, but that is exactly what the teachers are engaged in right now, is that learning on how to maximize the engagement in the instruction, whether it's recorded or live.
One last question. Would you think it will be one-on-one or more of group meetings? Even if it's, you know, if we're looking at online meetings, not obviously on-site meetings, online instruction, would there be like group or one-on-one?
It will depend.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that yet. It'll depend on your student and the other goals and how to address, you know, there's so many factors to determine that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I understand we're living in a confusing period. I'm just trying to, you know, trying to understand, and also trying to, like, from our point of view, like, I hope this is maybe one part of your question is, would you prefer group meetings or one-on-one meetings? Because some kids are very kind of intimidated from the one-on-one meetings, and some kids are not. So this is an important issue to really considerate. I know that my questions might be confusing because I'm coming from one point of view, and maybe another parent, or you haven't thought about it. So this is something that should be pointed out.
I appreciate that. That's a great point about maybe making sure that we dial down a little bit more about what type of instruction has worked best for students if we continue virtually, if it's in group or in individual or in group. So I appreciate that. We'll add that to the queue.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for your time. Thank you all.
Okay, so I guess with that, we will be sending out that survey shortly to everybody. This presentation is recorded, and we will be putting that hopefully on our website so people can access that. And then in additional, if there's any big kind of Q&As, we'll be putting that out. As I know more and as things change, I'll be sending out communication to parents as well as soon as I know. And so I just want to overall thank you for coming and spending your afternoon with us, and thank you to the panelists for joining us as well.
Okay. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks.